Hey guys, welcome to Priceless B Movies. I'm your host, Colin Price, and I'm just going to get this out of the way right now. I really hope that the sound of the rain in the background hitting the window is nowhere near as loud in this video as it seems to me. Getting that out of the way, this movie has to have probably the best opening text of any movie the last 30 years. I'm going to leave it at that. If you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you do see the movie, you're going to get a really good laugh out of just the first 15 seconds of it. Ravenous. Ravenous is directed by Antonio Bird and stars Guy Pearce as a disgraced captain during the Mexican-American War who is sent to this remote military outpost as kind of a punishment for messing up real bad in the field. And there he is put among a skeleton crew of kind of just other outcasts like him. There's Jeffrey Jones, there's David Arquette, there's Neil McDonough, a couple of just random people who are just kind of clustered together that the military doesn't particularly like, and so they send them to this outpost. It's kind of like a severe demotion, but you still keep your rank. This outpost is positioned in the middle of the Sierra Nevadas, and one night, seemingly out of nowhere, the stranger stumbles into the outpost and passes out, and they, take him in, and they're like, we gotta clean him up and save him, he might be dying, and yada yada. And sure enough, after a day or two, this guy is well enough to get up, start walking around, and, explain to them what he was doing out there in the middle of the woods. This character is played by Robert Carlyle, and he begins to tell the group a story about how he and his wagon trail became lost in the mountains and then had to take cover in a cave, but they were stuck in there for so long that eventually they had to resort to cannibalism to stay alive. And toward the end, it was only him and two other people in this cave, and he, kind of chickened out, decided, I can't be a part of this, I got to get out of here, and so he ran, and hence why he reached the outpost. It's then very quickly decided that these soldiers need to go find this cave and find the last two people who are stuck in there before one of them eventually kills and eats the other one. Right off the bat, I'm just going to tell you, I've only really described the first maybe 20 minutes of this movie. There's several twists between like the half-hour point and the 50-minute point that set the story in a completely different direction. I really don't want to ruin any of that for those of you who haven't seen this movie. I've seen Ravenous something like maybe 24 times. It very quickly became one of my favorite, more gore-oriented horror films of the last bit of the 90s. The actors are fantastic. Guy Pearce, I think, doesn't get enough credit for this movie. He's pretty well known today as a very good actor, but this was 98 or 99. I don't think that many people had even really heard of Guy Pearce yet outside of a couple films. But he does a very good job of portraying not just a sense of cowardice in his character, because he is the audience's eye as well as the main character, and he is obviously horrified at a lot of what happens in the film and is very scared of the antagonist character. So you feel for him, though. There isn't a moment of the film where you're like, oh my god, this dude is just a sissy. I mean, you start thinking, if I was in this position, I would be scared too. I would not want to be in this area. I would not want to be with these people. I would not want to be on this mission because of just the very real dangers, and especially not knowing exactly what is going on with this guy who just shows up and, not knowing what'll happen in this cave when they get there. All he knows is these people have been eating each other. And it's a very terrifying notion. Robert Carlyle is also great. I don't want to say too much more about his character than I already have. I will say that he is terrific at playing very oddball characters and giving them conviction. He's very rarely a straight hero or villain in movies outside of like The World Is Not Enough. He's usually a character who's very flawed, or a character who's kind of anti-heroish, or a character who's, I don't really know how to describe it. He's just great at playing oddballs. And speaking of oddballs, Carlisle's great, Guy Pearce is great. Jeffrey Jones walks away with this movie. He doesn't even have that many scenes, but he really walks away with what he has, and his character also is involved in one of the better twists in the story. A lot of you might immediately recognize him from Ferris Bueller and Beetlejuice and kind of these oddball comedies of the 80s, and even though I would say Ravenous is definitely a serious movie, it also certainly has elements of dark comedy. There aren't that many movies that have this level of viciousness and violence to them that I think I can laugh this hard at, because so much of this is, I don't want to say satirical, so much of this is so over the top and cartoonish that sometimes you're laughing and then you're thinking, that's really gross. That's not even really funny, but yeah, it is. Never mind, this is funny. The most impressive thing about Ravenous, I think, is how well it blends genres. It's very difficult to just peg this as a horror film. You could, I would certainly be quick to do that, or to peg it as a dark comedy. But there are elements of so many different genres in this. You could say that it's a folk story. You could say that it is a Western. You could say that it's a historical fiction. You could say any of these things and you wouldn't be completely wrong. But I do think the horror elements and the dark comedic elements definitely push it into those two main categories. But you could describe this film a number of ways if you tried to peg a genre to it. It wouldn't surprise me at all if you went to IMDb, looked up the plot keywords or the genre keywords, and there was just a laundry list of them. It's also worth noting that the score by Damon Albarn and Michael Nyman is especially good. It's one of my favorite scores to listen to, and it's all period instruments. That's what's really interesting about this. This movie takes place in the mid-1800s, and you're not going to find an electric guitar or something in the middle of the score. It's all period instruments. It's a lot of strings, it's a lot of drums, and it's very effective. It does a great job at highlighting not just the intensity of certain sequences, but also kind of the goofiness of others. It's an odd score, and it's definitely a score that would never work in any other kind of movie, but for this film it seems just right. The only negative that I really see about this movie is that I could very easily see someone watching it and just going, ew. It's a very gross movie. There's several scenes of cannibalism, of bodies being hacked up, people being disemboweled, just the goriest stuff you could think of. And some of it is so over the top as to be comedic, but in general, if you're not one for excessively gory films, I could easily see you not liking this and not even catching all the great elements to it, not catching how great the acting is, or how good the music is, or how funny certain parts is, and just seeing this is a disgusting movie about people doing disgusting things. I could easily forgive someone for feeling that way, but I tend to lean much more on the side of it's a very fun movie with just some extraordinarily gross moments. I'm going to give Ravenous 3.5 out of 4 stars. I really enjoy this movie. I've seen it several times, as I said, but also I can very easily see someone watching it and just going, this is too much. This is gross. This is not art. I can easily see that happening. In fact, I've seen this movie with several people in my lifetime. There have certainly been people who have told me, that's gross. Why did we just watch that? So I think if I was going to recommend it as a mainstream film, I got to take off some points for that, because there definitely is a limit, and I think this movie was going to cross that line for a lot of people. That's my review of Ravenous. Keep an eye out for more videos coming soon. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more Priceless B movies.